Everybody, good morning. It's Will with Schedulefly, and I'm really excited today to be talking to Jeremiah Higgins. I've known Jeremiah for quite a long time. He was an early customer, a very early customer of Schedulefly, and he was actually in our first Restaurant Owners Uncorked book, which we self-published back in 2011, so it's been many years. And Jeremiah he's been in the restaurant business for a long time. He's got tons of energy. He's got tons of passion for the business, and has been really successful in a lot of different aspects of the business, from owning restaurants to being an advisor, managing restaurants. And in fact, today, Jeremiah is president of HJL Hospitality and also of Evolve Advisors. In addition to that, he has the Jeremiah Show, which is a radio show and a podcast, which I was on recently, which was a lot of fun. So, but Jeremiah is just a great dude that I have a ton of respect for. So it's awesome to have him on. So Jeremiah, thank you for joining today, man.
Good morning, Will. Thank you for having me. So it's a real honor to be on your podcast.
Well, good morning indeed, by the way, folks. It's 10:15 my time, but Jeremiah's out there in California at 7:15, so he's up early and at it. Which I imagine he is every day, but thanks for doing this early in the morning, man. So take me back a little bit. And I know this story because we did the book, but our listeners don't. So tell me just the backstory of how you got into the restaurant business, which I thought was really cool, and how you got started.
How far would you like me to go back, Will?
Go on back, man. I know you've been at it a long time, but.
Yeah, well, it started for me like I imagine it starts for a lot of people in the business, where it was necessity to pay for school, to pay for college. So that's really how it started for me. There was and there still is, in Santa Barbara here, and in fact, I'm looking at it right now here on the ocean while I'm doing this interview with you. It's a little beach restaurant. It was called the Sea Cove Cafe. And it was owned by Terry Briggs, who was a famous jazz musician, and his mother, who was also very, very world famous as a jazz musician, Patty. And he had and supported jazz musicians on the beach 7 days a week. So every night there was a different jazz band right on the beach. It's an open air cafe. And that was my very first restaurant job. So I was a busboy. And within the year, I was the general manager of that restaurant at a pretty young age. I think I was 18 or 19, if I remember the years right. And we ended up putting on the Santa Barbara Jazz Festival, which would bring in about 10,000 people on the beach. And that was really my first restaurant job. And I did that for about 3 years. And decided I always had a love for film. So I decided at about 23, I needed to go back to school. I wanted to go to USC Film School. And so I went back I started working at the Enterprise Fish Company and the Sea Cove Cafe at the same time. And then I went to the Santa Barbara City College and pursued and got into the USC Film School. But all through college, I worked at restaurants. So that was really my first restaurant job, to pay for college.
Let me ask you, okay, so you went from busboy to GM in a year or so. How? What were the qualities that you had and the skills that you had that enabled you to do that? Because that's a big leap quickly at a young age.
Right. It's the same thing that I do now. It's it could be looked at as a plus for my business, or as I can't enjoy restaurants. So I just can't, I go in and I look for things that could be improved. So I think I've always done that. And at the Sea Cove Cafe, I just looked for ways to, improve the menus, improve, the operations as a busboy, as a server. I'm really big into training, really good training programs. So, I had a really good relationship with Terry Briggs, and helped him organize that jazz festival, helped him organize his training programs. He just, I've been blessed all along my career in the restaurant business with owners that have, when I was an employee or a manager, owners gave me free rein. They trusted me to make improvements and help out the operations. And that's, basically over about a 15-year period, I learned off of various owners' dime. It was my culinary school training. So I really just moved up with Terry because I had a desire to improve the operations, and I don't like missteps or extra steps. I don't like to see customers suffer in any way. I really think service is a lost art, and I try to bring that to all the projects. So I just learned basically, and as everything that I implemented started to build on the next thing, Terry gave me free rein. And the same thing happened with Mike and Randy at the Enterprise Fish Company, which was really, really how I think the career started for me, where I made it a career, made it a life, my life's work so far, is after film school. I graduated in 2000, and at that time, Hollywood went on strike. The writers, the actors, the direct, everybody went on strike, and it looked like it was going to be at least 8 months. And I just finished school, and I, of course, had big bills to pay at USC. So I was offered a general manager job at Enterprise Fish Company back up in Santa Barbara. And I thought, I'll just go do this while everybody's on strike. I was working for Alex Kitman Ho at that time at Miracle Pictures, and he produced Platoon and Wall Street. So I was with him for about 3 years, but everything shut down. So I came back to Santa Barbara, Enterprise Fish Company, as the general manager. And then that's kind of really where the story starts.
Gotcha. So you came back as GM there, and how long? So when did you start? Because you've had HJL for a while now. Tell me about the backstory with HJL and how you got involved in helping other businesses be successful.
Sure. So just to leap real quickly to Enterprise Fish Company. As I said, I was in the film business and planned on making that my career. So this is kind of the backstory to get you to answer your question about HJL. Just quickly about, I was at Santa Monica Enterprise Fish Company, and it wasn't doing too well. I looked at the P&Ls every week. I was a manager down there at the very end. And I know that Santa Barbara had been open, I think at that time, 25 years or so, but they needed some help as well. And 3 months in, the owners both sat me down and said, no, don't take this personal, but we'll probably be selling the businesses this year and closing. We're just not doing that well. And I said, that's not going to happen. They didn't want that to happen. I said, that's not going to happen. I'm going to hit $3 million this year for you. At that point, Enterprise had never done over 2.2 in 25 years. 2.2 was their best year. So I basically took the rest of the months that I had, I broke those down to days, to weeks, to down to shifts, to actual shifts. And then I figured out how much money we needed to bring in every day for the rest of the year to hit $3 million and save the business. And I took, the servers that I had on, the bartenders, I divided up and gave everybody sales goals every single shift. I told them what our goal was, that we were going to save the business and hit $3 million by December 31st. The owners both kind of laughed at me and said, politely, but said, okay, kid, good luck. We've never done that before, but good luck, and I shouldn't say I at all. The entire staff and I hit $3,008,000 on December 31st. So that was when I saw, and I made little improvements. We had no money, painted the bathrooms, cleaned up the women's room, put flowers in there, the hose stand, painted the hose stand, just really went through the restaurant and did what we could with paint and cleanliness. And then servers, really worked on the service, and I focused on the locals rather than the tourists. And at that time, it was really kind of a tourist business. I think it's fair to say, it was a seafood place that everybody came to in the summertime. And but in the winter, it was a little bit slow. So, worked on the happy hour, and still is voted, it's the same happy hour. It's voted the best happy hour in Santa Barbara for I don't know, 12 years or something. So flash forward, I met Michael Sigliano, who is owner of Santa Monica Seafood, a big seafood supplier here in California. He was a salesman, and he saw what happened. We basically took the business up from, I don't want to give out all their numbers, but 120% for all 4 businesses that they owned. Because they soon after gave me every other business to run. I was a COO. Michael Sigliano was a salesman and saw what happened. And when I left Enterprise Fish Company, he hired me to open this flagship store on Wilshire Boulevard as a director of retail. And I did that for a year, got them open and rebranded. And then I met Scott Liebfried, who was at that time on Hell's Kitchen. He was 12 seasons on Hell's Kitchen. He was in the store, and I recognized his voice. And I said, Michael knew him, and we were looking for a chef to redo the menu for the cafe at Santa Monica Seafood. So I said, let's have an interview with Scott. Let's get him in here. And, long story short, we hired him as the consulting chef to come in and revamp the menu. At that same time, I'd known Kobe Jones since 2001 or so, when they first won the Cup soccer championship there in LA Galaxy. Him and I were looking for a restaurant to open together. So on the set of Kitchen Nightmares in Manhattan Beach, we were in the trailer, Gordon Ramsay's trailer, and the 3 of us formed HJL. So it's Higgins, which is my last name, Kobe Jones, and Scott Liebfried, L. So it's HJL. Sounds like a law firm. But that was how it all started, on the set of Kitchen Nightmares in a trailer, watching Lido's be revamped, that episode, Lido's.
Gotcha.
2008. Yeah.
Okay, so that was 2008. Okay. And what did you want to accomplish with that group? What were your goals when you set out with HJL?
It's funny. The goals were to help, I say I want to create a better hospitality industry. That's our main goal, is to constantly create a better industry, better hospitality, better restaurants, better, well-trained staff, and better operations basically throughout the house. As you know, Will, restaurant owners are exhausted pretty much most of the time. That their day starts as soon as they open their eyes, and doesn't end until they close their eyes, and it never ends.
Well, it may start again in the middle of the night, though, right? With a
that is true.
Freezer that breaks or whatever. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so my goal was always, it's what I did at the Enterprise Fish Company is really where I learned. I think that's where I really learned operations. Again, on Mike and Randy's dime, they paid for my schooling basically, and they allowed me to, really dig into operations. And I was always looking, it's the same at the Sea Cove Cafe. I was always looking for ways to be more efficient, make the restaurant more efficient, make the operations more efficient. If there was 3 steps to a table, I wanted to get it down to 1. If there were, by putting things in places where it's like a chef, it's muscle memory. You want to set up stations where they're barely turning their waist. They're everything is set up the same way every day, so they start to learn, that the avocado is right there, that the tomato is right there, that the onion, the sauce. They don't have to turn and move too much. The same in the bar. You want to set up a bar where a bartender's not crossing each other. All those little details helped. I basically built systems to make things more efficient, and designed a profit and loss statement that really helped management, even young management understand the goals and find and pinpoint areas to become more profitable at the same time. So all of these things help in employee retention. You know, I really think that in any profession, people want to know what the goal is and what is expected of them. And so really laying out clear expectations, clear trainings, you know, what the mission is, what the goal is, and it seems to have been successful for me.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that was it. That formula, you know, is really what has happened over the years, and we've done. God, I've lost count, but it's between 120 and 150 brand new concepts, and then I actually did some work on Kitchen Nightmares, the shows that didn't make it to air. I would go help them. Sheila Conlon, the producer, you know, got to know these people, and if they didn't make it on TV, she would try to help them. So she would pass that to us. But when we formed HJL, it's kind of a funny story about just kind of jumping out there in faith and making things happen. When I Santa Monica Seafood, I was finished. It was intense. We did 3 reconcepts of retail stores, rebranded them. After 1 year, I didn't sleep at all during that year. I mean, that was talk about being up all night long and, you know, working on these concepts. I decided that I was going to move on. We had discussed opening HJL, but we had no clients. I remember driving off the lot at Santa Monica Seafood going, what am I doing? You know, I'm walking away from a pretty great paying job for the unknown. And as I got in my car, I got a call from a gentleman in Santa Barbara who ended up, he built 6 restaurants in 1 year. We built them for him, brand new concepts, and never looked back. So like I got the call in the parking lot. So it all worked out. And here we are.
That's awesome. So okay. So in HJL, it was initially HJL Restaurant Advisors, now HJL Hospitality. You manage restaurants for your clients, but you've also got Evolve Advisors. So tell me about the 2 businesses and what you do with each of those.
Sure. For HJL Hospitality, that is a fairly new, within the last year, a fairly new branch that we are developing. HJL Hospitality came about as a need. The clients, you know, we would build these concepts. We would set them up. We would train the management, hire all the staff, train the owners. But as you drive away, you know, within 3 months, 6 months, management changes. You know, it's a high turnover business typically. Staff changes. So we left them in great condition, and within 6 months, we would find that, you know, it was a brand new staff, even accounting staff. You know, we set up a profit and loss system, a budget system, a pro forma system, and maybe bookkeeping would change, you know, or general manager would change. So we saw a need, you know, to stay involved in some way. So our HJL bookkeeping part is underneath the umbrella of HJL Hospitality. And when we will do books, we'll do the profit and loss every week. We'll help them with their inventory at a really low cost. And then really it's just to stay involved and to maintain and look at their P&Ls and offer advice. And so you take that a little bit further. Sorry, Will, did you have a question?
No. I was just saying, okay, I'm tracking.
Okay. So HJL, you know, hospitality we also train and hire general managers and management staff and bar managers, kitchen managers, so that when someone is trying to source or find some of these higher positions, they know almost that they've been certified and trained, and we can put them in place, and then it's just a quicker process. So and then some properties find that they would like us to put our own staff in and manage, the property. So that's really what HJL Hospitality does, is offer training, train professionals and oversight after we're gone, after we set up the business.
Tell me about, so I want to dive a little deeper into setting up the business. And so you had this, like the example you gave when you were in the parking lot and you had a call and you set up 6 restaurants for this gentleman in Santa Barbara in a year or two. What does that mean? Does this mean somebody has an idea for a restaurant, a general concept, and they need help with execution? Or tell me how, like, who would need your service and what would you do for them?
That's a really great question, and I appreciate you asking. That's what I think, what I know sets us apart from other restaurant and hospitality consulting groups. What we do differently is that almost 100% of the time, a person comes to us, a client, with a concept or an idea, but it's not really fleshed out all the way. It's, I'd like to open a bakery, or I'd like to open a coffee shop, or a seafood restaurant, or a nightclub, hotel. They'll come to us with these ideas, but not really have all of the details in place. The logos, the websites, the branding, the marketing, the menus, the cocktail menus, the inventory, all the 1,000 things that happen, that need to happen just to bring the concept alive and to life. Another thing that's so unique about our firm, if I could brag a little bit about ourselves, is that we've done this so many times in so many cities that we can really help an owner with the permitting process, the health department, all the different government agencies that can get real tricky and delay a project. And then finally, we work with contractors, building contractors, mainly with Wilco Group, that a general contractor that we basically help manage the project along with the contractor. So we see you all the way through. We build all of the training manuals. We build all of the, do all of the hiring, all of the training, the mock services to open the restaurant, and then we stay about 30 days after, complimentary after we've been hired to oversee and make little tweaks. So we really see you, we help you bring the idea to life, and then in practical terms, and then we execute the tools and the things that you'll need to open the business. We oversee the permits, the building, the design, architects, all of it, and then hire and train staff and make sure that you get open correctly, and branding and marketing all along the way. So it's really a one-stop shop.
Is this typically would this be for first-time owners or owners that have a new concept, or what's the mix?
It's for anybody that, it really is an almost overwhelming amount of stuff that needs to happen to really create a successful brand. And so it's for anyone that, most of the people that have hired us have other concepts, but remember maybe that it was painful, or that they made mistakes and cost delays, which cost money, and rent and other things like that after you've secured a location. So, it's for anyone that needs help in any way. But we've also got specific departments like culinary, like bar, like bookkeeping, operations, etc. So if you maybe just need maybe a cocktail menu redesigned for the spring or the summer, we can come in and do that for you, and make sure that the pour cost is correct and give you a pour cost workbook and all those kinds of things. So it's for anyone that needs, that's just needs some extra help.
What are some of the things that like common misconceptions you think that people have that, where they have an idea? I want to start a restaurant. I want to start a coffee shop, like you said, or, a Mediterranean grill, or whatever it is. So there's this gap I find a lot of times between the idea of owning a restaurant and the reality of owning a restaurant. the idea is typically fairly glamorous. The reality is a lot of rolling up your sleeves and just hard ass work, right? What do you say to people that come to you that have this idea to help them level set and get a reality check? You know, that you can help them obviously, and you guys do a great job with that, but then what do they need to be philosophically and fundamentally just aware of as to what the reality of the, you know, next X number of years of their life is like? Because even with your help, I mean, particularly the first few years, it's often hard to get going. There's starts and stops. There's hurdles you hadn't thought of. There's just the fact that it just takes a while to develop a core customer base. Like, what are those kinds of conversations that you have with people?
Another really great question. Well, it is, you're right. It's a very tough business, and very little of it is glamorous. And I think that's really, you know, how many people have you met, Will, that say, you know, I'd love to open a restaurant someday, or I'd love to open a bar. Almost everybody I run into thinks it's a really fun business, and they'd like to have their name over a door, you know. So a lot of times it's a vanity project or for glamour, for a place that, for their friends. But the reality is it's 7 days a week, you know, pretty much 20 hours a day, unless you really set up good systems so that you can manage the restaurant and it doesn't manage you. You know, those are misconceptions. It is also a really great business, and if you do set it up correctly, you've got to build in time to be creative, to get away. You've got to get, I mean, for any business that you're in, you know, you got to get away to gain perspective, and to bring back your best self and your best ideas to the business. And that's how it really survives. So you've got to set yourself up correctly. And a lot of times it's like a wild horse, you know. Once you decide to open those doors, it just takes off, and it's bucking, and it's going in all these different directions. And, you know, if you don't have a handle on it before you know, it's not trained before you open the gate, you're in trouble, because you just can't find the time. And I think a lot of restaurant owners, you know, they have a hard time with the time management. It's just because it's so tough. It's, you know, so many things happen every day. Mm-hmm. So, being prepared, you know, I can't state enough, before you open the doors, or even if you're already you've opened the doors, have somebody come in with a new perspective, fresh eyes, and see if there's opportunities to make it a little bit easier on you and run a little more efficiently. Did I answer your question?
No, you did. No, you totally did. You see that a lot in this business. People that, you know, there's the idea and then there's the reality. I mean, heck, I used to think I wanted to open a restaurant until I started working on that book and talking to you guys all those years ago. And I thought, well, if I do, I better. I need to think through a lot more things. But
you really need to. There are conversations, you know, that I do have to really answer your question. What we've over the last few years, I have a rule. If you're opening a new concept, or if you want to hire us at all, we have to build a pro forma for you, a restaurant pro forma, or bar, or hotel. So we basically, and I've built hundreds of them with every different kind of concept. So I know the concept. I'm a real numbers guy with restaurants, so I know. I can almost feel, you know, how many people you're going to have on a Monday, depending on what your concept is, and what the per person average is. And we build these restaurant pro formas on paper before you spend a dime. And going through that process with a new owner, or even an owner that's already open, going through and really evaluating their labor, their food costs, all of their expenses, their overhead, what their daily break even is going to be, what days they lose money, what days they make money. When we go through that process of building a pro forma with the owner, you know, that separates sometimes the, you know, the reality versus the fantasy. it becomes real to them. So we will, like I said, we won't start a project now without building that pro forma, because we really want them to know and understand what it's going to take. And it's a real sobering experience, but it's also a very empowering experience, because the pro formas hit within 1%, and this is a true figure. I'm always within 1% of what we forecast. So meaning the restaurants pretty much do what we put down on the workbook, on the pro forma.
That's impressive, man. That seems like such a challenge to me, just because I don't know enough about it, but trying to sit down and figure out how, okay, in this location with this concept, this many tables, this much, whatever, it's one thing to understand what your cost might be, but understanding the volume you might do, I mean, that's a big deal. Speaking of volume, what about, we talked years ago about volume versus margins. Tell me about that.
Can I answer that real quickly though before you ask that question?
Yeah.
Here's what I do. I know what I've done. So many of these, I know, and I've studied this business for 30 years now. So I really know, what a Monday and a Tuesday look like versus a Friday, Saturday, or Thursday, et cetera. And it depends on the location, but I go conservative on sales. I go conservative on per person average, and I go high on expenses. Meaning, for pre-opening expenses and operating expenses, I go 2 or 3% high. So what typically happens is we build a really good operating system and train the people well, and then they bring those costs down. And if the training is right and everything else, because I've been conservative on my numbers, we usually, they look like a hero. The owner looks like a hero because they're actually able to build, 5% on the sales that I project. So that's how it balances out, and comes out looking good.
Well, let me ask you one more thing about that.
I don't do pie in the sky dream.
No, I'm sure you don't. But the pro forma also, it seems to me that if you've got something specific other than just let's go, work hard and do the best we can. When you've got numbers on paper like that, you anchor to that, and then you can work off of that. So sort of like your story about, going from low 2 millions to 3 million that 1 year in sales. You had a number. When you have a number you're shooting for, you're able to make tweaks and changes and think about, okay, if this is what we got to get, how do we get there? If we're not tracking to it, what do we need to change to get there? What things do we need to do? Do we need to do a happy hour? Or what can we add to help us get there? So that seems like a really, really valuable, critical piece if you're getting started in the business, which obviously I know you agree with, but that really hit home with me listening to you talk about that.
You need, whatever business you run and operate, you need a budget, an operating budget. You just do. It's your roadmap or your pro forma, which, for the new business, we'll take that pro forma and that becomes and then extend that. It's a 5-year pro forma or 5-year forecast is what we build. But we take that first year and we extend that out, as an operating budget. But, and then, you need to share with your management team the weekly profit and loss. So you need 3 things: a pro forma, a budget, and a weekly profit and loss. And the the operating budget is your roadmap, right, to where you want to. Weekly profit and loss is your report card. How do we, you have your operating budget in one column and what you actually did in another, and the variance, so that you can correct yourself if you went over in labor or you went over in your food cost. You can correct yourself every single week. And the weekly part is key. A monthly is too late. You're 6 weeks out by the time you get that profit and loss for that month, and it's too late to make any changes. So you really need to operate, because it's a pennies game for the restaurant business. It's the national average is 3% profit. I mean, it's just almost ludicrous. So to get to 10 to 12 cents to 15 cents profit on every dollar that comes in, you really need to have tools in place and proper training. So, it's your roadmap. Like I said, you have to have goals. And another thing I would really recommend, Will, on that point is I'll use Hurry Curry of Tokyo, this little place in West LA that's just has a cult following, just amazing curry. If you're ever in West LA, you got to check it out. Japanese curry place, 35 seats, I believe, something like that. They were doing about $700,000 a year, and they had a gap between 1 o'clock and 6 o'clock. No one came in. So that's one thing I do too, is I analyze where are the opportunities, like you just mentioned a moment ago. Where can we find sales? And so, that's a tough time for every restaurant business, right? People just don't, their eating habits, you typically eat in the middle of the day unless they're on vacation. So, but what we decided, we were right next to UCLA, is let's build a happy hour. So everything was half off, and we did smaller portions. And then we created these mocktails, that were kind of fun, and martini glasses. We ended up packing the place. We'd get the normal lunch business, the normal dinner business, and then we also did a late night happy hour. So we'd get them in again at, college students after 9 o'clock. But we ended up in 1 year doubling, and these are factual numbers. We went to 1.5
That's
in 1
insane.
year, by filling in that dead spot.
Yeah.
Kind of like focusing on locals rather than, tourists. And, just analyze your sales and see where there are opportunities and during the day, and then try to find and design something around that can add sales to your day, or again, Enterprise Fish Company, Mondays and Tuesdays, always slow for every restaurant. So we did lobster for $29.95 on Mondays and Tuesdays. We did a 1.5 pound. It's still going. And we would, we went from $2,000, $3,000 of sales to $9,000 to $10,000 every single Monday, Tuesday. You just look for opportunity and then create something that's fun and exciting and different in your area.
Reasons to be there, man. That's really awesome. God, that's incredible to double sales like that in a year. So, but it underscores that point. There's always opportunities, and it's probably hard a lot of times for owners. Just why you guys are good at what you do and successful, but it's probably hard a lot of times for owners. Like you said, that when you started as a busboy, you came in early on, and you've just never. I think you said you're never comfortable in a restaurant, or you're never satisfied. Like you're always looking for ways to improve, but owners a lot of times are just in the middle of everything. It's hard to find those opportunities, probably.
No, it's totally that way. It starts to run you, and I don't care how good you are. If you're actually operating a restaurant, I operated a restaurant for 3 years, and even I got my head went underwater at points, because it just starts to manage you. And so even with the best laid plans, you need to have, the best operating materials, if you don't have them, if you don't have those materials in place or the properly trained staff, it's just going to almost become unmanageable. And before you know it, that's why these shows are so popular, where these restaurants are just, the owners are overwhelmed. It ruins their family relationships, and they're in debt. It's because it's the reality, actually, more often than not. So you really owe yourself to get set up. If you're thinking of opening a restaurant, you should look at hiring somebody in your area, or hiring us, if you'd like, to help you set it up properly, because you need every advantage you can get in the business.
You mentioned earlier service is a lost art. Tell me about that.
Well, how often do you go out and really go home and say, that was amazing? From the grocery store to the gas station to a restaurant, it feels like, because margins are so tight, labor, is going up, especially here in California. The labor is just harder and harder to make money. Training seems to be the first thing that goes out. and gets thrown out, because it does require labor and time and effort and consistency, in proper training. And then also, I think hiring is so important, as we discussed in that chapter many years ago in your book. You've got to start with the right person and the right, that has the right personality and the drive and the energy and that cares about service, because I can train and you can train anybody, but if you don't have the right type of person that's right for the business, then none of that training is going to matter. So I just feel like it's a lost art that, I feel like I'm usually the one that says thank you as I hand my money over, and the person doesn't even look me in the eye and thank me.
You're right. I mean, to answer your question, it's rare. And so when I find it, or when we find it, my family and I, we latch onto those places because it is so rare. So you're kind of surprised when you have greats, which is actually the good thing about that, though. We find this with Schedule Fly as well. I feel like it's not just in the restaurant business; it's in every industry, just about. So the great thing about that, though, is as a business owner, if you make that a really central part of your culture, then you give yourself a huge advantage, because by and large, your competitors are not doing that. So if you excel in service, it's like if you just, the bar is so low these days that if you excel in service, it blows people away because it's so unexpected that all of a sudden you've got practically a darn customer for life, right? It's
right. You're totally right. And if you focus, it gives you an edge and an advantage that most of the places out there don't have. And it should never be something I have to convince owners to set up proper training programs more than I have to convince them of anything else. And I always wonder why that is. And I know it's a labor issue, but your return on that training investment is tenfold, if not more. Use the Enterprise Fish Company and the Hurry Curry as an example, and even Santa Monica Seafood, we had the fish cutters that sit behind these big counters and cut up your fish and package it up. Had been there for 20 years or so, and I started to train them on, we started to have wine training classes after the shifts, and what type of wine to pair with the fish that these people are picking up and taking home. Have you tried this? This goes great with this fish. And these guys were older Latino gentlemen who had never had that type of training, and they just latched to it, and they loved it. They loved learning about the wine and then suggesting, and we sold so much more wine because these guys, had a new skill. They learned a new skill, and they were excited about it, and the customer was just blown away. We get a little, basically a fish cutting sommelier. So awesome. There are so many ways, to improve, and service should be a huge focus. Those people that are your service staff are on the front lines, and they are representing your business, and they should have all of the tools, all of the training available to properly promote your business, no matter what business you're in. So you're right. If you focus on customer service and just happy, energetic staff that's well trained and knows what they're talking about and knows, what they're selling for you, you're going to benefit. And by the way, Will, you guys are really great at Schedule Fly. It's one reason I send everyone to you that we come across. It's, there are other scheduling software companies out there, but you guys do an amazing job. And if I email anyone, you guys are back to me within, a couple minutes. So that doesn't happen very often in my daily life. And when you find these businesses like yours that do it well, I stick with you. I'm loyal to you, and all of your, look at how much you've grown. It's just a perfect underscore, and it proves our point perfectly, that just take care of people, take care of your customers, and you'll be rewarded.
Yeah, man. You didn't have to say that. I appreciate that, but it's important to us, and it's but it really does. Well, you said it. You tend to stick with companies that do that because it is so rare these days, and you you notice it and you appreciate it. But let me ask you this. So one thing I hear a lot of, and you mentioned, you touched on this, we've talked before about the importance of being patient and waiting and hiring the right person, whether they have, like you said, you can train them to serve or tend bar, but they've got to have that personality of wanting to serve people and to enjoy and appreciate the value of serving people. I hear very often that those people are becoming harder and harder to find these days. Is that something that you see as well?
Having a hard time finding professional people that want to be in the business. Is that what was the question?
Just
I'm sorry.
Hiring people that have that characteristic of wanting to serve people, of appreciating the value of serving people. In other words, is it harder these days to find really good people to work in restaurants than maybe it was a decade ago or 2 decades ago or whatever when you got into the business?
Well, it really is. It's the restaurant business is changing really rapidly in a lot of ways, from automation to kiosks to just ordering online and delivery and just, the hospitality career person is harder to find. And I think that, every generation, usually you're relying on the college age kid, right? Or the first time job, or someone that's, it's a part-time job for almost everybody. So commitment sometimes is just not there. So yes, it's very hard. And that's why HJL Hospitality is becoming such a popular service, because we source and hire and train, people for you or screen them for you. But, it's such a great career, for someone that I think it falls on the owner and the management to train and hire properly. Even if you're hiring a part-time person that doesn't really care, if you inspire them, if you give them, a purpose and at the end of the day, you thank them for a good job, you start to find that loyalty and that passion maybe someone didn't think they would ever have for the restaurant business, like me, for instance. I didn't want to be in the restaurant business. I wanted to be in the film business, but I got inspired by the training and the positive experience. I also think it's a real honor to serve you a meal out of your lifetime, and if you can convey all of the different reasons you went into the business to your staff, you'll reduce training turnover. But yeah, to get back to your first question, it's tough to find good people in the restaurant business. It always has. It has been for the last 15 or so years, but I think it's getting a lot harder. And then if I read a statistic that the average training right now for a restaurant is about $2,200 to a restaurant owner. Mm-hmm. So if you make the wrong decision, if you don't really hire right, if you don't pay attention to that interview and give it the respect it deserves with that person, it could cost you if someone comes in and you train them for a couple $1,000, not to mention workers' comp and sales, employee taxes and all those things. And they're gone in 3 months. You may have lost, $10,000 very quickly on one person. So it's really important to, again, I keep stressing, interview correctly, get the right person if you can, and then from there, train them and inspire them and give them all the tools they need. It's just good for business all around.
Yeah, I talked to somebody recently, which was really interesting because there's this kind of prevailing ubiquitous idea that millennials don't want to work hard or, don't want to work to earn their stripes, which you see a lot of, I think. But what this person said is true. Also, though, what the good thing about millennials is they don't put up with anything. So through the history of the restaurant business, it was a lot of, yelling and people throwing pans across the kitchen, whatever. And Now they just say, "Nah, I'm not up for that," and they move on quickly. Is that something you've seen? Does a restaurant business have to change from a management perspective? And I think I'm hearing that from you because you're talking about inspiring people and helping them understand why you love the business. To me, that's the kind of thing that gets somebody excited versus, I'm the boss, go clean those dishes, do what I say kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, that you couldn't be more right. The millennials will walk, and I don't blame them because, look at everything that's happened in the last year in Hollywood, and business across the United States and the world. People have been. You don't need to berate or tear down your employees. It's because they do something wrong. It should be just the opposite. Again, I hate to complain about going out and getting bad service, and I won't usually, like most people. I'd rather catch them doing something right, that old saying. And the same with your employees. If you inspire them and you build them up, and even if they make mistakes, those are opportunities for you as an owner or manager to train them properly. Every day should be a training day. Every day they should learn something new. Every moment's a teaching moment, and they come in, they don't know, so they don't know what you're thinking. So it's up to you to give them the tools. If they're doing something wrong, that's really actually a reflection, usually on you as an owner or manager. It's hard to hear that, I'm sure, but that's true. And here's a great story about the millennial generation that I read. The banks, Citibank, Wells Fargo, all these big banks were having a real hard time finding tellers, right? So what Citibank proposed, I believe it was Citi or maybe it was Chase, they will pay, the millennials wanted to do something that made an impact in their life and in the world, right? That's really important to them. And by the way, I love how they've changed the fast food industry and the sourcing better food and GMOs and all these things, and they just won't put up with it. It's changed the hospitality and the food industry in a good way. But so back to the bank, Chase. I'm actually sure it's Chase now. First started this, and I think everybody else has jumped on board. But they will bring, if you sign up with them for 2 years, they will pay an entire, I think it's 7 months for you to go off and do something. Work with Doctors Without Borders or build homes or whatever it is that they care about to them personally. But they've got to come back and put in time, but they pay their salary to go out and do something and make an impact on the world. And a story, you touched on this, Will, a story, every business now over the last 5 to 10 years you've got to have your story, right? Everybody's got their story and what matters to them. If it's if they're giving back to some charity, or Tom's shoes, you buy one shoe, you get one goes to another person that needs one, that kind of thing. It's a story has become so ingrained, I think, in everybody's perception of a business that you've got to have that. So if you take that a little bit further, the millennials understanding them, or even these generations right now that are in the hospitality industry, tell your story, make sure they understand the story, and you were inspired for some reason to open your restaurant or your bar, and there's got to be a pretty good story behind that. If I know what that story is as your employee, and I start to care about what you care about, and I go out and talk about that story. So
yeah, for sure.
Best way to keep them is to have them really understand, what the business is about, and then enforce that daily. It can't just be a story. It has to be, they have to see you living that story and believing in that story, or otherwise, you just got a story to try to get people dollars in the door, and then that's flat.
Yeah, authenticity is key, and you're right. I think stories are, stories get people there, but your job is to execute on that authentic story and make it feel real, because it is, so that your employees and your customers will want to be a part. You're creating a tribe. I mean, that's what we're doing, is creating tribes, right? With these, with our customers, by sharing our story and why we do what we do, and being clear to ourselves about what we do and why we do it, and knowing that will attract the right kind of customer, whether it's in the restaurant business or in our business or any business, and trying to just execute on that every day so that, the right customers will find you. And I really like that.
And
philosophy.
your tribe will add so much. I mean, look at
your tribe will carry your story outward. That's right. Your tribe will carry it word of mouth. You can have a great PR firm and do tons of PR, but if you don't, that'll get people there. But if the story's not authentic and you're not executing on it, you're constantly just trying to get people there. Versus, I'd rather have people coming back all the time and then sharing that story organically, right?
Exactly. And, one thing that I have always, it's hard to convince a lot of owners for because it can lead to problems, but, staff really have a good employee meal program with your staff. And I encourage you to offer some sort of discount to another family member or friends when they bring them in, and encourage your staff to come in and drink and eat your food, because it becomes their place, and then it becomes their 20 friends' place. Let's go there after work.
Yeah.
As long as there are certain rules in place where it's not affecting your regular customers. On those off hours, encourage your staff to try your food. Encourage, get them to really love the place as much as you do. And you're right, they'll bring, going back to Enterprise Fish Company and all of my restaurants, all of the staff, it became their hangout, their place. And they were always respectful, and anybody that wasn't, was not allowed to come in, but they came in as customers, and then they became some of the best customers.
Well, when you see that too as a customer, to underscore that's one of the places I go to. I go like 3 to 5 days a week to this breakfast place, and service is great, consistent, food is consistent, everything's consistent, and the service is fantastic. But I always see staff, that I often will see them working there, and then I see they're there on their off day or whatever, which just signals something meaningful.
Right.
For sure. Well, dude, Jeremiah, man, this is awesome. I'm going to let you go because I know you're a busy guy. We could probably talk for another hour or two, but I really appreciate the time. You've given just like mountains of really great advice for people, and I know anybody that listens to this will have just tons of things to think about, probably listen more than once, take notes. Where can people find you?
Well, Will, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Again, it's a real honor. I admire what you guys do. You and your team is just amazing. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that lightly. You guys are really great. You can find me at Jeremiah. So it's spelled Jeremiah at HJL Higgins Jones Liebfried restaurantadvisors.com. or at thejeremiahshow.com. If you're a restaurant owner and you'd like to come on the show, give me a call or send me an email. We'd love to have you on our radio show, which is, a hospitality business and all the fascinating people that come through a restaurant. And then my website is hjlrestaurantadvisors.com or thejeremiahshow.com.
Awesome, man. Jeremiah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I know it's really hot out there in California right now, so I hope it cools down. But
probably not as hot as it is with you. You guys are pretty warm out there, aren't you? Usually in the Midwest there.
Well, in the South we get we get that wonderful humidity, but it's we're kind of used to it. We're slow anyway, so it just slows you down a little bit more. We have to sit around and relax a lot in the summer. But man, I admire your energy. I admire your passion for the business, your approach to really, finding ways to make the business even more successful, some that already are, and just make them even more successful. So it's a really, just your mind is working fast and creative, and it's a great thing to listen to you tell some of these stories. So thank you, man, a lot. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. And
thank you, Will.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you for those nice words.
All right, man.
And I'll talk to you soon.
All right,
thank you.
Care.
Bye.